Don, thank you so much for joining me today. We have a really interesting approach to our episode today. We're kind of bringing it back old school, back to that coffee shop, sitting on the couch, having a conversation about HR, answering Reddit questions of all things.
And I'm not offended at all that you're taking it old school and I'm the guest you chose to do that with. It's cool. Really, it's totally fine.
I think it's a unique perspective, a very unique perspective.
Well, the OG, I guess, right? That's what I'm here for.
That's right. So, old is a relative term, right?
So relative. Yes, we'll go with that.
All right, so let's dig in. These are juicy, to say the least, and I think they're very applicable to things that we're experiencing in the HR space. So some of them are long, so bear with me as I read through them. I'm going to start with this first one. I started a new job in August. I dress appropriately, but my boss has repeatedly told me I need to wear makeup. I wear mascara, but told her my skin is very sensitive and I haven't found a foundation or powder that works. She said I should at least wear lipstick. Last week, we were having a casual conversation while driving between accounts. She interrupted me and I said, and too often. She said that it's all she can focus on when I talk and that I have to concentrate on not saying the phrases. I need to stop saying them all the time, not just at work. If I only try to not say them during work, my interactions with buyers won't seem genuine. All of this criticism is creating a lot of anxiety. I'm constantly worried about my appearance and what I'm saying. I live on the West Coast and my city is very casual. Has my boss overstepped? I feel like she's getting into a gray area by criticizing my appearance and speech.
The answer could easily be I quit. So, there's that initial response, right? But it's a challenging one in one portion, and it's I think pretty straightforward in another way. So let's do the straightforward part. And by the way, for the sake of everybody who may be watching, my eyes are all over the place because I'm on different monitors reading these same things that Sherry's reading. So just so you know, I'm not looking off at the stock market. Dress appropriately is such a difficult term to come to somebody with. You're not dressing appropriately. What does that mean, right? What's appropriate? And if you have an appropriateness, typically what I would say to someone, meaning an HR practitioner who's managing this kind of policy, is what does that actually mean? You have to spell it out. If you're going to be that narrow in what you intend. And I'll give you a great example. So when my kids were in middle school and high school, there was a dress code. Now, they didn't go to private school. They went to public high school and public middle school, and there still was a dress code, right? And some of you remember terms like midriff or, whatever, half shirts, whatever it was. You couldn't show your belly. And so the school had to get so basic that they had pictures of not okay, this is okay. Not okay, this is okay. And somewhere along the line, we felt like, well, when people graduated from high school, they would then know what not okay, this is okay, would still mean. There's no manual that comes with you. It's not like anybody knows. So you still have to lay it out a little bit. What does appropriate mean? Will you show too much skin? What does too much skin mean? Don't say things like that. I love them. I'm like, well, I have long arms. I probably show, do you know what I'm saying? Like, this is probably more skin than somebody else's arms. Like, what is that? Am I losing because I have no hair? There's a lot of skin.
All that hair skin, definitely not okay.
But you know what I mean? Like, you're like, what are you saying? If it's like, I just feel like the clothes are too tight. I just feel like the clothes are too junior for somebody your age to wear. Like, you got to be really careful about what it is. Because that's a personal preference. That's not really like a corporate perspective necessarily. And I think people have to be really careful in HR about this. The makeup thing, give me a break. Give me a break. I don't wear any makeup. Nobody. Why would I have a different standard? I'm making the assumption, right, that there's a lot of she's used in this, right? So I'm going to make an assumption that there's some sort of identified as female bit that's happening here. I never have a conversation with a guy about, could you just put on a little mascara? I'm never doing that. How am I going to be okay to turn to someone else who identifies in a different gender and say, but for you need the mascara. Let's find you a nice shade of lipstick. Why would I say that to someone?
It's such an old way of thinking about professionalism. You know, I know that I've been told in my career early on, hey, you should probably learn how to golf because that's the only way you're going to be able to advance to like be in the room with the guys. You know, women are very hard on other women, and that's a whole nother layer. Like we're just making some assumptions.
And I am not going to touch that one. But yes. No, but you know what? It's so funny. And it's like, I'd like to know who decided that you playing golf was going to mean something. And I'm going to give you an absolutely appropriate example. I have the privilege of having a client that is the PGA. And the PGA is a client of ours. Here's the secret. I don't play golf.
Right.
Never have. I played 18 holes one time, and it was the longest day of my life. And somehow I managed to ingratiate myself with a whole bunch of golfers.
Yeah.
So if I follow that logic, do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is playing golf? I actually am able to interact healthily, have really wonderful, robust conversations. And I don't mean robust as code for negative. I just mean really like ideate and collaborate with a bunch of people who have a passion for golf that I don't have. And it hasn't held me up. So you have to really look at those beliefs that you have that you're sharing with other people. And I love to, by the way, let me make sure I mention this. This example is I live on the West Coast. And I just want to make sure people understand that, you know, we have sometimes in other parts of the country, we have a view that they're very liberal out on the West Coast. These kinds of issues happen equal opportunity across the entire country.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's not necessarily always this like, hey, I mean, it seems like this conversation that this woman was having with this other woman, assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Is that they were, there was like a level up that was needed, right? We also deal with the, like, you come in and you're not dressed appropriately, right? Like you went back to like, you're showing too much skin, but there's hygiene falls in these categories and all that other kind of stuff. And it's like, you can have conversations if there's a business reason and it makes sense and it's, you know, cognizant of bias and all those kinds of things, right?
Yes.
Telling somebody certain hairstyles are not professional. We're done with that, you know, but sometimes we have to have these conversations. This is not an example of one of them.
And it also undermines. So I'm going to pick on one tweak of this just real quick and say, if there's something from a speech standpoint, the vernacular that you're using is something I really want to address with you. So in this example, like and you know is what it says. You were saying like and you know too much. I'm going to say, and I don't mean this to be old school, I will say there may be a bit of that is actually really beneficial to point out to someone who may not realize that has become more of a habit than actually a form of communication. Can fall into this as well. And then, and I think that there's times where it's actually quite appropriate to say to someone, I have no idea if you ever noticed this, but you said like 48 times in that half an hour presentation. And while I don't think that anything that you gave in the presentation from a content standpoint was wrong, I wonder if those kinds of, you know, idiosyncrasies or colloquial idioms that you slip into distracted from someone being able to appreciate the effort you put into the real content that you had put together. That's a healthy kind of conversation with someone. But if you've been distracting them with dress and makeup and that they're not hearing that in the context, you wasted it. Yeah,
you missed your opportunity.
Yeah.
Someone once called out to me when I was working on not saying in my presentations that I just replaced it with right, like that affirmation. Right. And so they showed me a recording and I was like, man, I just swapped one word for another. Like I didn't really improve anything there.
Yes. And I'm, you know, again, I'm an OG, I'm a person of a certain age. And so when I was in high school, especially freshman year, I recall, we had public speaking as part of our English class.
Yeah, so did I.
And you got points off for saying some of these things too many times. They give you a little bit of grace, I think it was 3 if I actually remember.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too for me. Only 3 ums.
You're allowed 3 ums and that's it, right? And it was annoying because all your friends are sitting around and they're like holding up their thumbs, like keeping track for you. And you're like, I don't want to say that kind of thing, but it becomes counterproductive. It just becomes counterproductive.
For sure. All right, let's go to our next question.
All right.
Career in human resources. Hello, all. I'm currently working on my bachelor degree in human resources. I have about 3 semesters left until I graduate and earn the degree. What I'm wondering, though, is I see a lot of jobs in the field requiring experience, and I'm not entirely sure what jobs, internships I can do in the meantime that will give me experience. I wouldn't really want to come out of college and get a job paying $20 an hour. So anyone with an HR degree, what would be your advice? Or if you could tell me how things played out for you. What's the highest I can go with a bachelor's degree, even though sooner or later I plan to go do my master's work in HR? Any reply would be greatly appreciated. I would love to just tackle this one from my own experience to start off. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, worked part-time, and I used that time to get my education. So I went back to school, got my master's in HR, decided 2 masters, 1 master's wasn't enough and got 2. So I had an MBA as well, because I don't know what I was thinking. But then I was like, okay, now it's time to work. And I ran into this exact problem as they were like, yeah, you're super educated. You have a lot of really great ideas, but like, where'd you cut your teeth? Which there's some truth to that, but I think this linear thing of like, you worked in HR and therefore that qualifies you to work in HR or any job for that matter. Let's talk about skills, right? What are the skills that transfer? What are you seeing?
First of all, companies that are going to limit their candidate pool at an entry-level role by only talking to people who have HR experience is foolish. And so I would say, like, if you are talking to an HR practitioner who's working within an organization, who's looking for an entry-level HR role, call it an assistant or coordinator, whatever they may have, and they're mandating 1 to 2 years of experience, they're not wise in what's happening in the candidate pool at the moment. And so if you're only looking at jobs that are asking for that, you got to keep looking. There are other jobs that understand it's really entry level. The other thing I want to say is, please don't poo-poo $20 an hour. Like, please don't do that.
I agree.
I'm not saying, that's not to say that this is the job that you are going to retire off of, but $20 an hour ain't so bad. Listen, when I got my first job out of college, it was $15,000 a year. So, and okay, old man, the inflation and this and that, I understand. Yes, I do get that. But I want to tell you, 15,000 wasn't a lot back then either. And, my dad called me after I got this job and he was like, hey, congratulations on the job. You're never going to survive. And I was like, hey, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Right.
Hey, let me take you through the budgeting spreadsheet, son.
Right. And so $20 an hour for a time gets you the experience that you are worried that you don't have. Bite the bullet. You can live on $20 an hour. I appreciate that it's going to be a thrifty existence to a degree. I appreciate that, but it isn't the worst thing ever.
Yeah. And we all know like that next job, right? That's when you're going to start to increase your income.
Sure.
It used to be you were in a job for like years and years and years, and that's what we were looking for on resumes. That's just not the case now. You're in a job 2-3 years. Unless I see a promotion, we're like, hey, what's going on? Do you develop some new skills or new projects?
Or a challenge or some sort of skill development? I think it's not all linear, which is nice because not every organization can be so linear. You're going to go from a level 1, 2, 3 supervisor, manager, director. Everybody can't travel that same road. Like there's not enough roles. But what I would say is, this person with 3 semesters left. I mean, I just love I love college students. It's my favorite. Again, I've gotten called in to chat, guest chat to college students all the time. And I love asking, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing the HR thing? I just love people, right? I just want to work with people. And I'm always like, that's really nice. You'll hate people in about 2 weeks into the job because you get to experience the full breadth of humanity and the anger and the sadness as well as the joy. Like all of that is part of this experience. And so it can be exasperating and exhausting, emotionally draining. Like a lot of that can happen. And I'm a crier, which I'll raise my hand. I'm out in the open about me being a crier, way out in the open. So people would come into my office and hey, John, I need to talk to you for a few minutes. Sure. I just got back from a doctor's appointment and X. Yeah. And they start crying. I'm crying right with them. I mean, I'm just like, I'm broken with them. Yeah. So there's a lot of investment that happens there. It's more than just the rate per hour. It's more than just nobody's letting me in. That's not unique to HR. It's actually across the board in a lot of different industries where they're asking for experience in entry-level roles. What I would say, though, in specific to this individual, if the person were here, I would say you have 3 semesters left of college. There absolutely are internship opportunities in your geographic area. Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 hours a week. It's not about making the money. It's about putting things on your resume. And secondly, you likely have already had jobs where you've had human interaction and have had to figure out how to build teams, how to collaborate with a team, how to work within an organization. Highlight that on your resume.
Yeah. Especially with the gig economy right now, even if you don't find an internship, you could jump on a Fiverr, you could jump on any of those websites and find things that align to the HR skill set and just jump in and do those projects, right? A lot of times you can do that stuff in off hours, and set your own parameters.
Absolutely. And for 100%. And don't just look for the gigs that I had someone tell me who's young in their career. I really just want to do the HR work where this is a quote, where I can sit and just have people ask me questions and I provide my opinion.
Wow.
And I was like, first of all, that's my job. But second of all, I'm so sorry that someone has sold you human resources as being just that one piece.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to get into systems, right? You're going to have to log into a payroll system, into an HR management system. You're going to have to and enter things in there. I don't really love doing that. Oh, boo-boo, this is not going to work out for you.
Yeah.
You got to cut your teeth somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Oh, man, this is a tough one. I mean, it is and it isn't.
I love these, by the way. I hope everybody's like, I feel like it's like Dear Abby. And you and I are just like, here's what to do, dump them.
Yes. Human resource team and confidentiality concerns. I'm on a team of 4. One of the HR generalists is responsible for processing all employee change forms. I recently got a raise and the change form came across her desk and she was pissed. In the past, on a team, all of our records were kept private from one another. Change processes and anything relating to an employee on the HR team was dealt with by the HR director. My 2 other teammates have full access to all my files and vice versa, medical included. Is this how things are normally done?
I mean, it is a tough question for a few reasons. One, and you and I, right, we could talk about this part for a while. Who is in charge of your HR management system?
Yeah.
Right? Like how all of a sudden are the credentials different or the access points different for users? If it, according to this, everything was typically just handled by the HR director for anything from, well, how did that change? What happened there? Right?
Yeah.
Like that should be very easy to set up in an HR system to limit access.
Yeah.
The other side of it, if your HR people cannot trust one another, we're in trouble.
It's like using your coworkers' pay data to ask for a raise because you have a peek behind the curtain. Yeah. That is a huge, huge no-no. I mean, and I believe wholeheartedly in pay transparency. I do. And I believe in asking your coworkers if you have a relationship with them where you can talk about salary and benefits. I'm all for transparency. That's not what that is. That's being sneaky.
Yes. Yes. And if the response is the person became pissed, then that is pissed for one of two reasons. One, I feel slighted that I'm not paid the same as so-and-so. And number two could be, why would you pay so-and-so so much more than you're paying me?
Right.
Right? Like, neither one of them so great in terms of why the person would be pissed.
Yeah.
And again, if you're pissed amongst your own HR team, I would be very concerned about what their interactions are like with other members of the larger team across the organization. I can't trust you to know that you're going to have their best interest in heart when it comes to the difference between confidentiality and privacy.
Yeah.
I can't guarantee confidentiality all the time, but I can limit who knows and so provide a sense of privacy. If that can't happen amongst the HR team, who are supposed to be the leaders in that consideration, we are in trouble. The organization is in trouble.
Yeah. And HR systems, I mean, I think that's something you got to get right. You have to consider the access for the HR people. And in all reality, right, somebody on your team probably who shouldn't have access has access based on their role because they're at that level where they're entering data, right? And so how do you think about that, right? The conversations you need to have with that person, the types of culture fit, and I'm using air quotes for those that can't see, right? A culture fit that you're going to look for in that person. Do they have high confidentiality? Are they trustworthy, right? Can they take the information and do what they need to do with it? But, you know, in our org, the only people that can see that data is a very small team that's their whole role. Yeah. So, you know, I have an org of 250 HR people and I can't see all their data, you know, like that would be ridiculous.
Well, and if you're getting to the place where medical data, as in this example, is able to be seen, that's a big problem. And before, you know, I know some people might think, well, that's a HIPAA violation. Actually, it's not always that. It depends on the kind of organization it is for really the bones of HIPAA to be applicable.
Yeah.
But certainly there's something private and confidential about some of that information that's purposely limited as to who needs to know. I am a fan of assessments, right? So I want to piggyback on something you just said in terms of figuring out what their appetite for confidentiality or their lean towards confidentiality would be. If you're giving someone an assessment that is basically asking them, do you keep things secret? If they want this job, who is going to say no? I'm a blabbermouth and tell everybody everything. I mean, you aren't getting a real good feel for the person.
Right.
You might have a shrewd person who knows what they need to answer in order to qualify for this job. That's not what your intention is. That's where I think if you're going to apply, and I love what you're bringing up, right? If you're going to apply some sort of how do I litmus test to see where this person may fall in some of these qualities that are necessary so that the skills that they possess can be displayed appropriately, then use things that are bias-free. Work towards, behavioral science assessments. Use those instead, because it's harder for an individual to figure out where is this leading, because it's not so A to B. Are you an honest person? Yes. What is the other answer? No. Right. Please hire me. I'm a liar. Right? Like
sometimes I'm shady. Sometimes I'm good.
Right, but if you ask, if you have an assessment that's really done well, again, from a behavioral science perspective, you can't figure that out. And it really then gives you the insight as to, this person's trustworthiness can be questionable at times. That may not be so good for them to have access to a lot of private information.
Yeah, for sure. All right, here's the next one. Man, this one hurt when I read it. Is human resources becoming the worst job?
Yes. Next question.
Saturday night, you think I'd have so many other things on my mind, but I can't stop thinking about quitting my job with no backup plan. I feel like a lot of people are here right now. Yes. This is partially so difficult because I feel like I'm whining, which I should just be grateful. I have a decent paying job. So please don't comment or make me feel worse. I already agree with you. Love it. Taking ownership.
Yes.
Okay, back to the point. This field requires you to be doing everything at once. In reality, you control finances, future success, hiring, firing, legal compliance, employee relations, and so many other things. I have no idea how this can be sustainable as a department. I have worked at 3 different companies where this is the case. I have done jobs where I was the only one in the department and where I've been in a team of 7. I end up feeling constantly burnt out. And they go on, and it's a very long post, but I'll stop it there. Man, is human resources becoming the worst job?
Yeah, I mean, later this person, of course, why I said she, but this person says, or should I run away from this field? I love that question. It's a really honest one. I mean, my first response is, you're right. I mean, that's my first response. You're right. There's a lot of those components that are listed that are the responsibilities that fall to human resources. And those who are listening and watching, some are an HR department of 1. So literally all of those things are direct responsibilities for one individual. If you're in a large organization and there's a director of HR or VP of HR, there may be tiers of other practitioners who report to you that handles 1 or 2 of some of these responsibilities. So ultimately you're responsible, but you have people to work with you through them. When you're a department of 1, which by the way is a very high percentage of HR practitioners in our country, yes, they are handling all of these things. So what I would say to this individual is, first, if that's daunting to you or scary, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you should do it. But I would say don't let the fear affect your decision as to whether this is the profession I want to continue to move in or towards. Embrace the fear, because the fear helps keep you honest and it helps keep you hungry. You have to keep researching. You've got to keep learning. There's no rest for the weary, right? Like you have to keep going. But if you realize that and then say, I don't have an appetite for that, that's very different. Then this may not be the route for you to go, right?
I would add too, so I've done the HR department of 1 thing. Don't know if you've done that in your career.
Yes.
But, one of the things that I came to the conclusion of, and I was lucky because I went like big org and then HR department of 1. So I had a background, so that was good. Not everybody has that luxury, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you get promoted into an HR role and you have to, wear all the hats. I mean, one of the things that I learned early on is that having a conversation with the business leader as to what is most important for them, right? What is most important for the success of the business? It gives you an opportunity to help prioritize your work and know what is going to have the biggest impact to the org and to what you're doing. And the things that you can just honestly say like, hey, yeah, I can do that thing, but I'll be honest, it's not going to be 100% perfect. It's going to be 85% because you find this area more important. Start having those conversations. I think sometimes we miss that opportunity as an HR department of 1 based on fear. We just think we have to do everything. And then
For
everything
sure.
is kind of 80%, not 100%. Nothing's 100% then.
Well, and pepper on that, right? The fact that the larger percentage of how work happens for an HR practitioner during the day is responsive.
Yeah.
You have great plans, and I'm sure they're wonderful. Like you walk in knowing that proactively, these are the things I want to accomplish today. And then the phone rings or you get that email and it's like, hey, we're going to need to let go of so-and-so today. And you're like, wait, what? So-and-so, or, hey, I'd like to talk to HR. There's a claim of discrimination. I mean, that's not only today, that might be the next few days because of the investigation that you're conducting. And if you can't handle the fact that your schedule in some ways is not your own, there's always a balance, but in some ways your schedule is not your own. And that's a frustrating point to you in this career. I don't know that that's going to go away. So having sort of that rubber meets the road perspective that truly matters because high work stress can happen in the human resources department. It certainly can happen in finance. It certainly can happen in operations. I'm not saying that it is exclusive to HR, but it is a high stress, and you have people that you have to talk to through that stress.
Yeah.
It's tough.
When I started that role as that HR department of one, the first week I was there, my supervisor came in and she's like, all right, she's like, you've been here a couple days. We've been waiting to do this till you got here. I need you to term these 3 people. And I was like, okay, not super great to start my career off here. The 3 people were the CFO, the director of operations, and the head of maintenance. And I was like,
joking me?
No, I'm totally serious. I was like, they're going to call me the Grim Reaper. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah.
But again, it had no idea. That didn't come up in the interview. Like, hey, are you holding up any
didn't?
fires?
I'm so shocked it didn't come up in the interview. Wow.
So you don't know what you're going to walk into on any day. And yeah, you got to block time. And we've talked about that before. Like, you do have to manage your schedule a little bit, but you're right. You have no idea on any given day what you're going to walk into. Maybe, like you said, you get that call where somebody sits down and gives you really terrible medical news. Well, like, you're an emotional person, right? That's going to affect your decision-making the rest of the day. So maybe you had a really great brainstorming session that you just know, hey, I'm not in the mind frame now to be able to do this.
And listen, some of you need to hear this, and I mean this loving, honest and true. Somebody comes in and shares, just like you're talking about, right, that difficult medical news, and you're doing the side eye to your Outlook calendar.
Ugh.
Right? You're like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry, but you're like, okay, I can do this for 4 more minutes. Like, they know what's going on in your brain.
Yeah.
Just let it go. This person needs you to just love on them. They just need you. And
such good advice.
Yeah, like, it's just, tomorrow's going to come no matter what. So we'll figure it out. Yeah.
All right, next up. HR question about work incident needing immediate advice.
Immediate. Well, we're late. Apparently, we're late. I don't know how old this is, but.
There was an incident at my workplace where the center director of job brought alcohol on a big holiday to celebrate with employees as a gesture. We work in a somewhat medical place. It's a plasma center.
Somewhat medical.
Medical light. Yeah. When the employees were clocked off, some of them decided to take a shot with the center director before leaving. Well, this got taken up to corporate, and my center director, which most of the employees adore, was fired. I heard he took most of the rap for the employees. Our employee handbook does state no alcohol on the premise, but the regional director and HR are still launching an investigation on what happened on that day. And I heard the employees that were there and admitted to drinking have the possibility of being terminated, even though it was the center director who made it seem okay to do what they were doing. It was literally half our staff who were there on that day who took a shot. Is there any way they can avoid termination or figure out a way around this? Someone please help. Any advice is greatly appreciated.
I mean, this is heartbreaking for different reasons, but so much for the celebration. Sounds like it went over really well.
Right?
You've done a great job.
The manager is like, all right, I'm going to build some camaraderie and show like I'm a human being, and then gets fired. Yeah.
On a big holiday to celebrate, to recognize people. Congratulations, you're all fired. Right? Like, what is it? What is happening here? I would say, gosh, the policies that are written can't define the people. They're supposed to guide the people. And so if you say no alcohol on the premises and you're a medical light organization, because I know these medical light organizations, what do you do when a vendor or supplier comes in during the holidays and says, you all are the best. We love working with you. We love supporting you. Here's a case of wine to divide up amongst some of the staff. We're so grateful. Do you tackle that person and have them arrested and brought out because they now have brought alcohol on the premises? Right. Do you cancel your vendor contract with that person or that agency because they've done so? I'm going to bet you do not. So what is the intention behind no alcohol on the premises? Because a closed bottle, by the way, and I really will date myself, there are things that are probably stored in the facility that actually could also serve as an agent of being out of your mind a little bit, whether that be some sort of medication, even down to rubbing alcohol for those who are of a certain age. And remember Kitty Dukakis drinking rubbing alcohol when she was in her lowest spot. This was the wife of a political presidential candidate. And she shared that that's how desperate she got, because you can become intoxicated to a degree off of that. Are you removing those things? No. Come back to what the point is. What's the guideline of the policy? Stop trying to be so literal with everything. And you're really going to look at half of your staff and say, you've all violated the letter of the law, and therefore you're gone. I hope you're enforcing all policies to that degree as well.
The one that hurt as I was reading it is when it talked about, it seemed like the staff were actually really cognizant and were like, let me clock out.
Yeah.
Like, let me not actually be working.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that was smart. If you kind of knew the policy in the back of your head and you're like, okay, like that doesn't, technically the alcohol's on the premise, so I didn't bring it, like whatever. But it goes back to what you said of like, let's stop being the policy police. Let's have real conversations about what the intent was. And I don't know, personally, I probably wouldn't have fired that director. I would have had a serious conversation with them and been like, hey, you kind of set a bad example because of we have this policy in place. Maybe next time invite them across the street.
Yes.
Like,
that's
build
what I
the
was
same
thinking.
kind of things. Yeah.
Totally agree. Like, and that's the kind of wisdom conversation you have with that senator.
Yeah.
Right. Your thoughts were really kind. You had great intentions. How do you think you could have handled both in the right direction, both consideration for various policy and the idea of wanting to celebrate with your team? I probably should have had them all go across the street to so-and-so's for happy hour and buy them all a drink. Probably. That's probably better. Because the other thing is, I already know, I can hear the finance and HR people who are uptight, right, already wanting to scream at me, and I'm sure I'll be getting the ats on social media. But, the idea of like, John, if those people left that job that day, even though they clocked out and they got into an accident and there was alcohol found on their breath, that terrible things happened, the company can be held liable. I understand that. I'm not disagreeing. I do understand that. I'm not advocating for those things. But what I am saying is, can we discuss the context rather than being so immediately punitive that no one could ever look to the left or to the right? If you're at the point where you're really thinking about firing half of your staff from this particular center, what in the world is going on?
Right.
Like, you just have to ask yourself that. How did we get here? Because it's not reason. I just think we have to take a minute. We have to take a minute. And I would bring that center director back and I'd say, let's all talk through this. How could we have done it differently? Ask them. Yeah. Let them tell you this. You know what, John, now we're looking back on it. We probably should have done this, that. Fantastic. Did you all learn something from this? Absolutely. Amazing. Let's try to apply it the next time an opportunity like this comes up or you'd like to say.
That's where I want HR to sit in general. That's where we should sit, not in this, I caught you.
Yes.
All right, I think we got time for one more.
Amazing.
Reaching the end of a job interview, the human resources officer asked a young engineer fresh out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, quote, "And what starting salary are you looking for?" unquote. The engineer replies, quote, "In the region of $125,000 a year, depending on the benefits package," unquote. Which, for an engineer, isn't that crazy if you know anything about the tech space.
No.
So the interviewer inquires, quote, what would you say to a package of 5 weeks vacation, 14 paid holidays, full medical and dental, company matching, retirement fund to 50% of salary, and a company car leased every 2 years, say a red Corvette? Quote. The engineer sits up straight and says, "Wow, are you kidding?" The interview replies, "Yeah, but you started it."
Like, first of all, HR shouldn't hurt themselves too much by trying to be the comedians. Like, relax a second, right? Just relax a second here. The other thing, and I'm not looking at any cheat sheets, everyone. So, because I know not everybody can see, they're listening to us. I'm not looking at any cheat sheets. I'm pretty sure if this job was taking place in Massachusetts, as an example, I know the person went to school there, but let's just say it was happening there. They actually can't even ask, what salary are you looking for? So one of the things I just want to make sure is, this is still happening. Make sure your hiring managers know what they're allowed to ask and what they are not. There are plenty of places across this country that do not allow any longer for you to ask, how much money are you looking to make? So stop asking that question.
Yeah.
The idea of sort of being snarky in your response is so fascinating to me. Typically, this is the AV club. Here's where HR is the AV club, and my gosh, I'm really ruining myself. But
I was like, does everybody know what the AV club is? As they're listening, audio visual. It stands for audio visual. Yeah. It usually existed sometime in your high school.
Correct, right? You remember this? And so I'm, again, a person of a certain age, that the couple of people that were in the AV club had the keys. They had the keys to a lot of places in the school, because they had to go get all the carts with the VCRs and TVs on them and wheel them everywhere.
Come on, they had the projectors, right.
I mean, we had film strips. We had film strips. I'm not kidding you. We had film strips that would have the tone to let you know when to advance. Yes. I told you I'm a person of a certain age. I'm in the Smithsonian somewhere. I'm telling you. So, but what do I mean by that? Those keys gave those individuals in the AV club this enormous sense of power and cockiness, though they lived truthfully on the outskirts of the social strata within the high school. Yeah. And I know that's painting with a broad brush. That was my experience of everybody that I knew that was in the AV club. They were just on the fringe. And part of the reason they were on the fringe is because they were not fun to be with, because they got off on their power. Like, that really meant something. They kept their keys on the outside of their belt loop, so they jingled as they walked. Like, seriously? The janitor has that too. Like, what is it that you're trying to tell me? Sometimes HR falls into this where we're like, this is our opportunity to really mess with some people. That's a terrible impression of the organization you're encouraging them to interview for and with. Why on earth would you be snarky? Engineers are not a dime a dozen. What if this really turned this person off? And when you called for the second interview, they were like, yeah, no, thank you.
I mean, the other thing too, with how social everything is, right? This person goes on Glassdoor and blasts you up one side and down the other. Yeah. I mean, we're reading this question off of Reddit. Right. It's out there. Yeah. I mean, and kudos to them. They didn't actually call out the organization. But that's definitely a factor. You might be in a position where you interview for a job and you just you're not the right fit. You end up not being the fit. They go somewhere else, but your interview experience was so great that you tell everybody, yes, hey, I didn't get a job at this company, but it's not because of whatever. You should apply. They're a great organization to work with. They're going to be honest with you in your interview process. If you don't meet the mark, or if there's things you got to work on, you're missing that opportunity if you reply like this.
For sure. And to totally agree with you, I'm seeing more and more, I would say over the last 5-6 years, of people being very, very bold to go online and not only say the negative, but to say the positive, to say, I did not take a job with the ABC company because of, other reasons. I had to relocate or this. But if anybody's interviewing an ABC company, good for you. They were a fantastic company, a lot of great people I spoke to, good luck to you. And you read that and think, they didn't have to do that, right? It's so awesome that they felt encouraged to do that. But I don't want to let HR off the hook, because I really believe strongly, and again, that, you and I have talked plenty of times, but I tease about it, but in 30 plus years of being in human resources, I'm still so encouraged by all that we get to be involved with and how we get to present the organizations we're a part of, how we get to present our profession. And that is often found in the basic relational building blocks. That's where it's often found. So to take some of the approaches we do in our responsiveness, we really have to do better sometimes. These things that we read, we read through today on Reddit, which, by the way, is so fun.
You'll have to come back again.
Yeah, let's do this. This is so fun. I love this stuff. This was great.
Well, John, it was great having you on the podcast today, and I definitely will invite you back. We're going to keep this format, one of our regular formats, going forward, because there's just so many questions out there. And I feel like we didn't even get into some like dirty HR questions, which they're out there.
I have a drawer full. I'll let you, yes.
We're going to have to tackle some of them. So yeah, John, thanks for taking a few minutes of your day.
Thank you so much.